What's up, all you cool cats and kittens? We are live. You didn't think I was going to say that, did you, Josh? Okay, so welcome in. My name is Blake Bernard, and this is the Train to Win podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by the one and only Covenant Coffee. It's hope in a cup, guys. All the proceeds, correct, Tom? Proceeds? What are proceeds? I don't even know.
Everything.
I hope he doesn't see this because he's going to think I'm the worst for his sponsorship. So, hey, all the proceeds from purchases to Covenant Coffee go towards employing those less fortunate. These are foster youth, giving them jobs, giving them work-life experience to really set their lives off on the right foot, okay? Providing opportunities to those who may not have had them otherwise. It's a great ministry and one that you should be happy to give your change to, Covenant Coffee. All right, now today we are joined by Coach Conrad Dahl. And he is the head strength and conditioning coach at Bakersfield College, also an adjunct professor working in the kinesiology department, and has played a large role in their success athletically up on the hill. Coach Conrad, welcome in.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Well, hey, for the uninitiated, tell us who you are.
I'm Conrad Dahl, born and raised in Bakersfield. I'm at Bakersfield College, where I'm actually a full-time kinesiology professor.
Sorry for slided you right off.
That's right. I do adaptive physical education, strength coach, kines, health, all the above. Help out with a lot of curriculum within our department specifically. But a little bit about my background. So I went to Chico State, got my bachelor's and my master's there in ex-phys and strength and conditioning. 2012, I interned with the 49ers, and then 2015, I got a call to help out with spring training with the Raiders. And that's really what got super interested in doing strength and conditioning, in those team settings. And I knew I wanted to be at a college level after that pro experience. I was like, okay, I don't know if this is quite for me. It's not very stable. I wanted something, stable, and I did enjoy teaching and things like that. And it just, God obviously worked in a mysterious way. I had told my parents, and they ran into our old athletic director, Sandy Taylor, at Sam's Club. And she's just asking about us. And she goes, well, Conrad's trying to get back into teaching and coaching, and got my foot in the door. And then I'm here today.
The rest is history. Now, a lot of guys don't taste the league and then get out. So tell me a little bit about the stability factor and what it was that kind of showed you maybe where your life's work lay.
So I mean, I think it would have been better for me to actually go and do like a GA experience, like at a D1, a little more education there now. Because when I got to that level, it was kind of, they just kind of feed you to the lions a little bit. There's guidance there, obviously, and things like that, but it's kind of like, all right, you need to do this, this, and this. And we're like, oh, crap. Like, I don't know what I'm doing quite yet, And the interesting thing, you're there with other interns, and, we're trying to all flex our brains and see how intelligent we are and all these things. And I learned that these head coaches at this pro level are like, hey, keep it simple and stupid. That's the stuff that is effective. It's what works. And so that was very eye-opening to me, but they were also very honest, and they, would tell me like, if you don't have a family, you might want to think about doing something else. It's very difficult to kind of start one once you're in that world. So that was something that was also eye-opening for me. And then, so NFL, right? Amongst other pro leagues, it's a business, right? So let's say you might have maybe a player gets injured, let's say, right? Boom. He can point his finger at me and say, well, he wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing with me.
Yeah.
And then they can go, see ya, you're gone. And I was like, okay, that freaked me out a little bit.
Which is kind of unfair because they don't actually spend a ton of time with you.
They really don't.
So really, you're at the mercy of whatever it was that they did for their whole off season. Some of these guys see absolute lunatics that, should never lay a hand on a professional player. And yet you would be the guy to take the fall.
Yes. And now, thankfully for me, like, I'm okay. I was just an intern. right?
Mhm.
I mean, we're not even being paid really, right?
But you saw that coming. Like what would lay ahead if you continued?
Yeah,
down
and
that
I,
path?
and I asked questions to the mentors that we had and stuff, and I was lucky enough to where they were very open and honest about things, and I was open and honest about, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Again, great experience. I mean, I wouldn't have really known what I wanted to do, I don't think, if I didn't do that. So I'm very thankful for it. I mean, it was definitely a big time godsend, and I'm very blessed to be able to even do that at a pro level coming out of high school or college. You know what I mean? So it was, luckily I had a couple professors at Chico State that are very well known in the kinesiology field, but also in athletics. You guys might not be familiar of Dr. Thomas Fahey. I don't know if you've heard of him. He writes a lot of the kinesiology books for different programs, around the world. And, but awesome, phenomenal discus thrower, just a phenomenal guy. And he was actually the one that implanted in my brain, like, hey, you should think about a junior college. It's a great place to you're getting these kids in this transitional phase, going from high school to college. You get to teach, because that, you get to those 4-year levels, a lot of the time you don't necessarily get a focus on your teaching. You have to do, you're writing grants and you're doing all these things. And believe it or not, that's how I got my first teaching experience. Some of my professors, were off doing their sabbatical or whatever it might be, doing these grants. And so I come in as a TA, right, as a graduate student, and I teach these undergraduate courses, and I loved it. And I was like, at the time as well, I was coaching, I was the head throwers coach for Chico State.
Oh, wow.
After I had been done competing, and I loved it. And I was like, okay, this is kind of what I want to do. I already had those internships kind of set up. So I was like, well, I'm not going to miss out on a professional experience,
Right.
So after that, because with the Raiders, their spring training is done at Napa High. Okay. So after doing that, I was kind of, because you're working for free. So, I'm working 2 jobs just to kind of stay afloat and do what I'm doing. And, that's where that random call came from our ex-athletic director, retired athletic director, Sandy Taylor, on, would you be interested in, starting here as an adjunct, and kind of getting your foot in the door. And I said, absolutely. So I moved back home and loving it. I mean, so now keep in mind, I was lucky. Junior college is a very competitive job to get full-time. There's still people up there that are still part-time, that have been there 15 plus years.
Yep.
Right. And I was adjunct for a year and a half.
Dude, that's like a blink of an eye.
Oh, I was kind of amazed that it happened that fast. I mean, very excited about it, obviously. I just think, again, I'm always going to say it's a godsend, because I think he just works in these amazing ways, things that we don't even realize until we kind of look at it retrospect a little bit.
Come on.
And I was just like, God, so let's think. I became full-time so it was the spring of, let me think, what are we in, 2024? So it was the spring of 2018, right? And I got my full-time position that started that following fall. So, then COVID happened and stuff, and it's just, everything was just crazy.
Yeah, but that would have been about the time you got full-time, right?
Yeah, so like right before that, because after that happened, we see this plummet in, students and things like that, because nobody's on campus. And we were fighting as coaches, straight, me and Coach Peters at BC, to work with these athletes.
You got to justify why you're on payroll,
and that's what we said. We're like, if we're going to do this job, let's do it, and so we kind of had to fight to be on campus during COVID. And, it was a little funky, we had to be outside, so we had to get creative with those things. And again, kind of a great learning experience, trying to get creative with very limited equipment being outside. But, I think it was, as a department, it actually made us a little bit stronger, because a lot of people were kind of upset that we were still on campus doing things. And, but we said, we got a job to do, and this is how we need to do it. I mean, if you're going to train an athlete, or, you know, you have, let's say, an activity course or something, like doing that online, like how is that really feasible? At least to me, I don't understand how that can work well, unless you're going over, you know, the theory of, you know, the sport itself or the theory of strength and conditioning. But again, you're only getting so much out of it.
Right.
You know, you got to be, what I would like to say is in the trenches, you know, under the barbell, putting in the work, you know, to actually see that progression, you know, and that development actually happening, you know. I'm not saying theory is bad. Theory is good, because the more you understand something, I think the more you get out of it. But it's just, that was, you taught at a high school before, right?
I did.
Before. So you probably understand this pretty well. But it was just such a odd time for education in general.
Yeah.
You know, especially seeing, you know, how the high schools were doing things, and then we're getting these, you know, these young athletes coming in, and they just, it's like, you know, deer in the headlights, like, what is going on? You know, it's
well, not only that, I remember how crazy it was for all of the Division I guys bouncing back, and guys that the pileup of talent that happened at the junior college level, from high school guys not getting picked up because of all the uncertainty, and then guys getting COVID years added on to their eligibility. That's actually one of the things I wanted to ask you, was kind of like, that was awful then. I haven't heard a ton about it since, but that's not something that gets fixed in a year. Is it the trickle down? Are you still seeing the effects of that now with, like, I don't want to say careers being wasted, but maybe opportunities being missed for some guys because of there are only so many spots on a roster, and these places they're trying to get to now, the transfer portal's a thing. What do you see at BC?
So, I mean, we're, you know, luckily at BC, we're one of these top junior colleges in California where we're, you know, we get creative on finding ways to get, you know, these ladies and these guys out and getting them some form of a scholarship to a 4-year. Now, it's, I would say you're seeing less of, like, you know, trying to get these people to transfer out to like a big school, like a D1, because that's obviously where all this action is happening, right? And add the transfer portal on top of that. You know, you got people transferring over and doing all this crazy stuff. And, you know, we might have some really legit, I mean, D1 caliber, you know, athletes that, you know, they kind of, it's almost like they're kind of stuck in this limbo a little bit, right?
Well, if they're an 8 and they're being compared to an 8 that went to, I don't know, Charlotte, you know, like a mid-major Division I, they're going to take the guy who already had that money under his name, basically. Someone already took a chance on him. He's just that much more proven because he was at that level. But you and I both know BC plays the starting 11 on both sides of the ball in your conference. Those are all Division I guys.
I mean, there's a majority of them that could. I mean, now, again, I'm going to bring up this point from COVID where we're getting this young blood in. And I do think due to COVID, there was this lack of maturity, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
You know, because some of these athletes or these student athletes, you know, were kind of handed things, right? So they don't really, at least in that last year, if they were junior, senior, whatever it is, you know, so it's kind of like that work ethic that they might have had before had kind of disappeared. And then now we're trying to, like, regain it back. And it's getting better. I'll say that.
I will say that too.
It's getting better. Still frustrating at times.
Man, I was worried it wouldn't, though.
Like, I was very scared.
The world put on pause. I was like, how do these kids recover? You know, and I saw it in the classroom. You did too, right? But man, the decline of their mental health at the time.
Well, I think that was probably the biggest issue.
How much did you see kids, like, in person during the lockdown?
At first, in person, like, not at all. And then, like I said before, you know, we really fought to at least be with these athletes,
like outside,
you know, and stuff. And it was kind of, now that I'm thinking about it and looking back at it, I remember these guys, they were just so into it. Like, you know, I didn't have to really get on anybody's butt.
It was the best thing they had going for them.
They were just like, you know, we're doing something. We're out, we're with other people, and we're, you know, their age, you know, their peers. And so it was actually kind of a fun time of training because it was very different, right? It's like we weren't in a weight room and Now at first it was a little difficult because I'm like, okay, what can we do that's really, something that's going to be advantageous for them.
So tell me about that, because we love the barbell, we love squat racks, all the equipment that we're blessed with. What did you do when you had nothing?
So believe it or not, I would truck these kettlebells down to the practice football field.
All the way down there?
Yeah.
Like on golf carts or what?
Well, so the first time I had like this, I don't know what you want to call it, like a push cart kind of thing. It was like a trash can with rollers, basically. Okay. So I just pile them in there. I'd put foam rollers in there. We do things with dowels. I'd put some med balls in there. And so I just truck this stuff down, and it would take a couple trips. And finally, we were able to get like a golf cart to make it easier and quicker. And I remember like thinking to myself, always doing, I was like, oh my, I'm miserable doing this. Like just trucking stuff up and down.
Work, dude.
It's you got to think, BC's built on a hill, so it's, you're going up and down, this whole time. And I remember thinking, like, when we were done, I was like, man, I'm kind of exhausted. That's not good. And, just kind of being petty, I guess is what I should say. But, it was kind of fun getting creative. I learned a lot about myself, and being a strength coach. And, I learned that, there's a lot that can be done with very minimal equipment to none. Like let's say baseball, for instance, I was with them. We did a lot of, change of direction work, a lot of agility work. I did a lot of speed training during that time with them. Most of the strength training we did was either body weight or it was done with kettlebells. I'd get creative with med balls, doing certain things. I really don't want to say this, but I'm going to say it. It was kind of CrossFit minded a little bit. I'll say a little bit. Not as crazy, not super CrossFit, but the time. We had an hour together. And I'm like, okay, like how much can we get in and do that? So, in terms of that, it was very kind of CrossFit like, I'll say. Like
stations, more times, yes. AMRAPs, things like that to like get the effect.
Yes.
Interesting.
So, and that was, that was kind of how it started. Then I started getting a little bit more structure as I started learning, and saying, okay, this day we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. So I started kind of getting more into my high-low method.
Sure.
A little bit, you know what I mean? And again, I remember I still have these binders. I think it's 3 or 4 of them just filled with notes from this COVID stuff. It says COVID training on the notebooks. And I'm like, and I've looked back at it sometimes now and I'm like, man, that was kind of smart. That was pretty cool, and kind of give myself a pat on the back. And then there was other things I'm like, oh yeah, I'm never going to do that again. I'm going to have to figure something else out if something like that was to ever happen, God forbid.
100%.
But I kind of look back at it, it was kind of fun in an interesting way.
Absolutely.
Obviously very different, but it just seeing these kids kind of light up when they're around their peers and stuff, it just really made it worth it.
Absolutely.
So that was pretty cool. And, and that's kind of where I think, me being at BC and kind of really, I think that's where a lot of my athletes kind of started learning more about my faith, as a Christian and stuff, because I would always, start the morning off. And I don't really know why I did this. I just I don't know why it was on my heart. And I knew these kids were struggling with COVID. So we always kind of started with like a prayer, so, I'd kind of have them, we'd all kind of sit in what I would call our stretch lines. Right. And, I'd just say, all right, bow your heads. And I'd say a prayer, nothing crazy significant, anything like that. They might be pretty short, but, I just wanted these guys, and girls to know that, number one, you're not alone.
Yes.
Number two, like with anything in all of our lives, we got to put it in God's hands, and just put that trust in him. Right. There's things that even I catch myself today, I think I can control, and I 100% cannot. So that's always something I always, I'll catch myself sometimes and I'll be like, right in there, I'll just, kind of say a little prayer in my head and just, be like, God, I'm giving it to you. Just take it away. Show me what to do. And, it's just, you got to be willing to, really put your trust in them, and just remember that you're never alone, right?
100%.
So there's always he's always there with you, and I think that's where a lot of these student athletes started being like, oh, Coach Dahl, he's a God-fearing man, he's a Christian, and it was pretty cool because it started some pretty cool conversations with some of these athletes, because we do get a lot of Garces kids and things like that. So
and they need Jesus too.
Do you know Joey Campbell?
Oh yeah.
So Joey Campbell, he's got a podcast, and he had me on it. Just because we had kind of built a relationship, over those things, and it was, and they're still doing it now. They're, they do some really cool stuff, and it was a big learning experience, I think, for all of us during that time. It was very transitional.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's just.
I think it stretched everybody, right?
Oh, it did.
Had to flex new muscles. Some of us.
Yeah. Oh man. There's times I was like, I'd get home and I'd talk to my wife and I'd be like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, am I doing the right thing? Like, am I giving them enough? Or
oh, that is such a good line from every amazing coach I've known.
But you know what I mean? Like, like, am I giving them enough? And Allison's like, are you kidding me? She's like, dude, you're there an hour early, setting everything up. You're like staying late. You're doing, I was doing all these things, but I'm like, but is it enough? Because I understood what everybody was going through, including, like our family, and me and my wife, we got married in November of 2019. So our whole first, couple years of marriage were COVID, and I remember this, sitting in our house and we're just, what do we do? And I was very, I'm sure we got on each other's nerves, for sure, probably more often than I even think. But my wife, being, a very strong woman in faith, and she's the one that I think that kind of really brought that out in me in the time, and then I, and as we know, kind of biblically, the husband or father, is kind of the spiritual leader, should be. And I'll be honest, I don't think I necessarily was at the time. I mean, I had a strong faith, but I wasn't doing, everything I could do to really make that present, in my household and things like that. And so starting that with those athletes, I started seeing it come into my household. And I think it was that's what got me and my wife through, our first couple of years of marriage during COVID, because you got to think, like, before that, I'm gone all day, because I would be, I'd work at BC, and then I was actually, for a couple years, I was the throws coach at Garces, and then I was doing a couple classes at CSUB that I was teaching at night. So I'd be gone, because my first teams I work with, we're starting at 5:30, and then I'm not getting out of CSUB till 9 or 10 o'clock. So I just wasn't around much, and then COVID hit. Now I'm around all the time, and my wife's like, "Oh my God, you're driving me nuts," And
so you would say that's kind of a catalyst for even like maybe a springboard into your faith and being a minister over your household was first ministering to your team.
100%.
That's amazing, man.
100%.
Now I was a junior college athlete. Spent way too many years there, actually.
Yeah.
Now here's the deal. It was I still to this day think that junior college was such a necessary experience for me, but also one that I hold in high regard in my own journey. Tell me what you think about this. Looking back on it, it was a cool kind of halfway place to be, because it was the place a lot of people got second, third, fourth chances. This weird little like stumbling, I don't know, this moment in a kid's life, a young man's life, where they like maybe didn't do things correctly in my regard, like took way too much for granted, fell flat on my face. And that was the moment I started getting back up. As a coach, have you ever given any thought to like why the Lord put you at BC instead of a Division I strength program or the NFL or anything like that? And what kind of a role your leadership plays on campus today?
That's actually a really good question, because I have thought about that. So this, okay, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a background here. So my mom was the head women's basketball coach for quite a long time at BC. I think could be wrong. It was at least 20 some odd years, maybe 30, maybe 30. And, so a lot of the people that I work with now, my peers up there, were peers of my mom's, and they knew me since, baby.
Oh, so they're the people that when you're on campus, they're like, I changed your diaper.
Oh yeah, or I saw you running around, or I saw you sliding down the poles down the stairs and said, oh, you got to stop doing that, whatever. So for me to come back to BC and work with these people that I really grew up with and that my mom worked with, it's kind of full circle for me. And I think it's definitely something that me and my mom have really bonded on too.
That's cool.
Because my mom is always been a very, religious woman, phenomenal mother. So she's, one of those, I can call her about something and she'll be like, well, I'll get you on the prayer list. I'll get you on the prayer list and we're going to pray. And, and so it's been something that's always been in our family, which is a definite blessing. But now in terms of like the junior college experience, so I went to BC myself.
Okay.
Before going on to Chico State, and I had some pretty nasty injuries at BC. That I'm going to say back then kind of had really tested my faith a little bit. I lost all three of my grandparents within like 7 months of each other. Then I had this crippling injury. Me and my coach were actually throwing the hammer down in that sump in the rain, and the swivel on the hammer broke and just nailed me in the shin, shattered it. And I was like, at the time I'm like, oh gosh, like what is going on? And, my coach immediately is like bawling.
Whoa.
Because I had started getting some looks from some D1s for hammer and shot put. And, so that I remember just thinking like, why me? Like, why all this at once? It was just a really hard year on my family in general. My dad losing both his parents, my mom losing her mother, and, me losing my grandparents, and then that injury happening, and so it was tough. Now I stayed an extra year to kind of, try and regain, any kind of collegiate throwing career I could have. And luckily I have these phenomenal coaches. It was actually, you're familiar with the Varners?
Oh yeah.
So Amber Varner, or Amber Atkinson now, and her husband, Carl,
phenomenal
coaches, both of them, phenomenal family. And, he was like, hey, you can do this. Like, don't take no for an answer. And he was very like, just, you got to put your faith in God, and he's going to lead you where you want to go and where he wants you to go. And, so that was like, for me, that was really, really cool. I have never really had somebody talk to me like outside of my family like that. So I thought that was really, again, something that was very eye-opening for me. And sure enough, I was able to, compete that third year. Had a little funky hitch, obviously, with that foot throwing the hammer and the shot, but we worked around it. And, I was still able to throw pretty darn well, and got a little scholarship to Chico State. And the funny thing is, they had looked at me before that injury, and Kirk Freitas was the head coach at the time. Again, an amazing man. And he goes, well, I know you're probably not going to come here. I know you're getting looked at some of these D1s and everything like that. After that injury, not a single D1 would talk to me, but Chico State did the whole time. They would check in with me, see how I was doing, and that meant a lot. So when I started kind of getting looked at again that third year at BC, I was kind of like, I already had my mind made up. I said, I'm going to Chico. It meant a lot to me. I just felt, God was really pulling me that way. So I went up there and I absolutely loved it. I loved it. I was on the track team there, and there was a bunch of us. We went to church every Sunday together. We had Bible studies together. It was a very strong knit group. It's all like, it's kind of funny. I always would explain it. I was like, how a fraternity and sorority is. That's how like our team was. We were all very loyal to each other, very helpful with one another. We were just kind of all there for each other, and I just would always tell my mom, I'm like, man, I'm so happy I came here. And they would come up every chance they could get. And they were just, my mom would always tell me, she goes, this is an absolute godsend. You're where you're meant to be. had a great, good college career, had a, great education up there. And, so there's, I guess what I'm getting at is there's always been, a pretty strong sense of faith in my life. Whether it be good things, bad things, it didn't matter, and I might not have realized it so much at the time, but when I look back at it, I'm just like, oh man, God was there the whole time. And sometimes I kind of kick myself in the butt, for maybe not realizing it at the time, but I guess it's better late than never, And so when I got to, start coaching and teaching at BC, I wanted to kind of make it a point. I didn't want to hide my faith, I guess, I didn't want to go out there and, be like, God this, God that, or anything like that. But I wanted to show it through my leadership.
Come on.
You know what I mean? So I wanted to more so lead in a positive way. If somebody wanted to talk to me about, their faith or anything like that, I was open door policy. There was no issues with it. Till this day, like there's athletes, that I don't necessarily coach, but they know who I am and they'll come and talk to me, and I think that's something that I've, more recently I've thought is really cool. And I think that's, maybe a small way that, God's kind of using me with some of these younger athletes, and saying, hey, you can be an awesome athlete. You can be an awesome, person of faith, an awesome Christian, and it's just, I feel like there's this weird, obviously, right. The world's in a weird place right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Especially here in California.
Never weirder.
Right. But, and I feel like, I might get ragged on for saying this, but I feel like, Christianity or faith in general is kind of being attacked.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And now I think it looks bigger than it really is. Being up at BC, we have so many coaches that are just strong men and women in faith. Like we got Carl Dean. We go to, we all go to LBC. Seth Dameron's with us now. The Dameron family's got a legacy up there at BC. And
Mm-hmm.
I was so excited to have Seth, finally where I think he should be.
Sure.
In this first year. And he's done a phenomenal job. And he started getting the FCA kind of back and rolling on campus, which I thought was really cool. And I just hope that keeps growing. We had over this past fall, we were able to get some football players in there, on Saturdays and Sundays, after maybe the little morning practice and weights and, have a little Bible study through the FCA has been really cool.
Oh, freaking cool, man. There's no doubt about it. God has amazing plans up on the hill.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely no doubt about it. Now, we're running out of time here. I wanted to ask you about your thoughts, your advice to maybe a young man, a young professional. Let's just call a spade a spade. You've got one foot in the world of academia,
mm-hmm.
and then you've got the other foot in strength and conditioning. Neither one of those is a super faith-based culture, right?
No. So, I would say no.
Yeah. So, but regardless, we're not the only ones. What advice would you give to a young man or someone pursuing a career in maybe a similar path that does believe, but is, maybe doesn't know how to fit that in? I know that when I first got into this thing, I didn't know where faith fit in my professional life.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I've learned so many lessons along the way. That really kind of led me to think I was overthinking it the whole time, But I want to know your opinion, man. What advice would you give to someone that, man, loves the Lord, but maybe, doesn't know how to reach those around him without thumping them with the Bible?
So I would do it. So kind of a number of ways, I think is how I would explain it. Number one, I would say, be who you are. Don't change who you are for anybody. Be who you are. And don't, because there's times there's been some people that have been like, oh, Bible thumper, blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, it's not affecting me. I'm like, just roll off the shoulder. I'm going to stay, who I am. And, I'm going to stay with my faith because I, 1,000% believe in it. And, so the biggest thing I would say is, be who you are. Don't change for anybody. Right. Don't let somebody change who you are because they might say something nasty to you or whatever it might be, and then, kind of, I guess the way of showing that faith without, thumping the Bible on somebody is, like I said earlier, show it through your leadership.
But what is that? What is that?
So leadership,
that's a dying quality, man.
Okay, so there's different ways I think it can go about. Like Seth Darman's better at this than me because sometimes I do get a little bit of a potty mouth out there. But he is so good at just using, I would say, better language, which I've gotten better at. And Seth's actually made me better at it, just watching him and do what he does, right? And then there's other ways of, kind of how I said earlier during COVID, I'd say, hey, we're going to say a prayer, and like I said, it wouldn't be some crazy long prayer or anything like that. It was just, hey, let's bless this training today, Lord. Let these guys have some fun and, let's just have a good day and, and continue that on, so something very simple like that. But so it's not like, I'm not thumping these kids saying you need to be a Christian, anything like that. But I'm showing them that I am, and I'm proud of it, right? And so I'm hoping that that kind of can stick with them, and something that they're not going to shy away from if a buddy makes fun of them or something like that, and they're going to be like, hey, it's who I am, it's what I believe in, and I'm good with it, because, and the thing is if you're more that way, like personal experience for me is people respect it. They might not agree with it, which is okay, right? That's humanity. That's the world, right? If everybody agreed on everything, it'd be super boring. You know what I mean? But it's we have to stay strong in what we believe in, and I think that leads into how we act and who we kind of have around us. And things like that. It's, that same term, like if you want to be successful, put yourself around successful people.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I think successful people have strong faith. And so that's what I really try to surround myself with. And, and as I've been going through, I just it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Like I'm one of these weird guys. I wake up at 3 a.m. every day to get my training in because I'm up at BC at 5:30.
Mm-hmm.
So I get my training in, but the first thing I do is, so I get up, sit on the, side of my bed, and I meditate, AKA pray. And it can be, about really anything. I might say, hey, bless this day, let my wife have a good day, thank you for our health and my daughter. And, just, I always catch myself just being very thankful.
Man.
Because for me, that helps keep me in check, put things in perspective, so that's the first thing I do every morning. Right. And then that kind of actually gets me prepped. And then I'm like, boom, then I'm on the treadmill, starting my warm up. And then I'm, going out to the gym and doing my thing. And usually my daughter wakes up pretty early. So my wife will bring her out and she because a big thing for us is we want to give her experiences, and part of that is, we want her to see what we do. And, training's a big part of that. Faith is a big part of that. So one last thing, a funny story. She was very colicky her first 2 months. So I had a student, actually, brought me a Bible for her. So it was a children's Bible and it was Old and New Testament. That first 2 months, I read her that thing from front to back. That's the first book I ever read to her.
That's amazing.
Was that Bible? That's
amazing. A student gave it to you?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
But see what I mean? Because I never said anything like, hey, I'm a Christian or anything like that. They, like I was kind of explaining through that leadership, they just kind of knew it.
Man, it's the life you live, man.
It was really cool. I mean, I was so thankful for it. And again, it's just one of those godsend things. It happens all the time. Sometimes we just don't realize it or we don't notice it, but it happens all the time.
Well, that's so cool, man. I'm so encouraged just hearing this stuff that those kids on the hill that I just have such a heart for, they're in such good hands with dudes like you, Coach Dean, man, just so many. Now, I want to say, I think they're drawn to men with principles, guys who stand for something, whether it's Jesus or whatever. So I think that's always like the lure you're putting out, or maybe the allure of Coach Dahl is like, this guy, he believes in things. He's convicted by things. He's life follows principles, right? And then they find out those things those qualities that make you such an awesome leader. It's actually your faith. It's actually Jesus, right? I mean, it's like hook, line, and sinker, right?
Yeah.
We can't always guarantee they're getting this stuff at home, that they have other men in their lives that have those qualities.
Well, see, so you're just kind of preaching on another point of what a coach is
Ooh,
to a lot of these people. I mean, and more or less, if you're a woman coach, men coach, whatever, you're a father or a mother figure, and that's something that I had actually learned from my mom early on since she was a coach. And that's something that always kind of stuck with me. And so I was just like, I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to shy away from it, and it's been a blessing. And the thing is you're not going to, get to everybody or get through to everybody. But if you get through just one person, I think that's pretty successful.
Dude, you're sowing so many seeds.
Yeah.
So many seeds. I'm so happy you're a BC.
I am too.
Freaking A. Well, dude, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Now, I would be do we know what your podcast is going to be titled yet? Because you can talk, bro. And it's going to be so good.
It's titled Bibles and Barbells.
Okay.
So it's very, we just kind of want to get a good message out there. But again, similar to what you're doing pretty much is, we want to talk things strength-based, and leadership-based, and knowing Coach Coble. I mean, have you ever met Wes Coble?
Only by reputation.
Okay. So you might have to have him on here one day.
He's next.
Seriously, he's phenomenal.
Okay. Very good.
Phenomenal man. I mean, you talk about strong faith and, through his leadership, that's the dude. And that's another guy that I think that's made me better, and so when you brought up the idea, I was like, let's do it, so we're trying to figure it out.
Very good, man.
Yeah.
Very good. And the kingdom's better because of it.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
hey, I appreciate you, man. If people have questions about, I don't know, kids expecting or wondering what they can expect to BC, or maybe they wanted to get into one of your classes, anything, shoot the crap about strength training, what they need to prepare for maybe, being 19 years old on campus and trying to reignite a football career, where can they find you?
Up at BC, go to the gymnasium. Now, we're building a new gym, so make sure you come to the old one. But if you literally probably mention my name anywhere in that building or on campus in general, they're probably going to know. They're going to send you to the right place.
Look for the wider door frames. That's where Coach Dahl's office is.
Yeah, but I'm always up there. You can always shoot me an email if you just go to gogades.com or you just look me up on a Bakersfield College website. My email is up there, and shoot me an email.
Very good, man.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody listening, this has been Train to Win, and we love being live. Again, shout out to our sponsor, Covenant Coffee. Okay, it's open a cup. If you like stay ultra caffeinated like Coach and I do, you can find no better. And with that, we bid thee adieu.